Sorry about that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC. This is episode 150 on Saturdays in the SEC, and we have a special guest, Alexander Plant from his podcast Plaisant. Give a little
Yes.
backstory on yourself before we jump into the episode.
All right. I as well, a Alabama resident, formerly University of Alabama grad. Really looking forward to this podcast. I am obsessed with sports. I've been podcasting myself now for about 2.5 years. YouTube, I do any kind of long form content considering college football, NFL, NBA, and then specifically on my Instagram, I talk about college football. My TikTok, I talk about the NBA, and then YouTube Shorts, NFL. I'm all over training camps for college football, the NFL right now. I honestly don't know how I'm still employed because every waking moment of my day might be consumed with this. So really looking forward to it. Let's get on it.
All right, well, we're going to jump in with Georgia. Probably, won the league last year, and everybody considered them to have a down year, which that's a crazy standard to uphold there. But I feel like this year they're going to be better on all facets. Maybe the question mark at quarterback. Some people weren't happy with Carson Beck at times, but I thought he did just fine. They led the league in drop passes, so I don't think it was all Carson Beck. Sometimes those guys couldn't catch anything. I mean, you think in the Notre Dame game they had a player wide open, can't think of the guy's name, hit him right in the chest. He drops it. They convert there. You never know what happens in that game. So, I don't think everything was on Carson Beck like a lot of the media likes to report. I feel like, in the fans that you'll see on social media. But, I could be wrong. I think Gunnar Stockton's going to be really good. Nate Frazier at running back. Roger Robinson's the guy I'm really looking out for. They're pretty much returning a lot of guys that have definitely played a ton in the wide receiver room, but they might not be just the most household names. Dylan Bell, Colby Young, both of them returned. Neither one of them put up just amazing numbers. Dylan Bell had some drop passes last year. That was some problems. They did go out to A&M and get a transfer in Noah Thomas to bring him in, and USC, Zachariah Branch. So they've kind of gone out and got pieces in their wide receiver room that they may need. But their offensive line is the key we talk about all the time. You got to win in the trenches. Both lines of scrimmage is the most important thing in the SEC, especially if you're going to compete week in and week out. Every one of their guys has started several games. There's not really one other than Ernest Green that has a set spot where he's played his whole career that kind of moved around. But there's a bunch of snaps under all these guys' belt. The OC Suns running the point at center. I think that's really cool. But outside of that, their tight end room is good as always. I am excited to hear y'all's opinions and y'all's takes on their offense, though, going into 2025.
Cameron, be my guest. Go right ahead.
Man, you laid it out really well, Card, and I thought with the offensive line, that's like the main area I'm looking at with this Georgia team. And obviously what we've come to expect with Kirby Smart in this program, we know they've got one of the best rosters in the country, one of the best coaching staffs in the country. I think the biggest disappointment, I would say, from a year ago was their offensive line. I think, not quite to the standard of what you've seen Georgia and some of their championship seasons and what you've come to expect over the last 7 or 8 years. And if they can get their offensive line back to that level, and obviously it's going to be hard for them to ever repeat the 21 and 22 teams, especially in this era of college football. It's hard to keep quality depth. But if they can improve their offensive line play from a year ago and get it back to what you would expect a Georgia offensive line to be, they're going to be right there in the mix to accomplish all their goals. And this receiver room in particular, I think it's one of the better ones Kirby Smart's had from top to bottom. They've completely overhauled it. You said with the drops last year was a big issue throughout the entire season. Getting Colby Young back, getting Zachariah Branch, probably one of the most electric playmakers in the country. I mean, he was a highlight reel at USC with the ball in his hands, and getting Noah Thomas from A&M was a huge get out of the portal as well. Then returning some guys from a year ago. So I think the receiver room's going to be much better. I expect the offensive line to kind of get back to form too. And then, Gunnar Stockton's got not a ton of experience, was thrown in there in the SEC title game last year due to injury, and in the playoff game, I think that experience will serve him well with some better pieces around him in 2025. And I expect Georgia to be right there in the mix to achieve all their goals again this year.
Okay, so I agree with both of you guys. I think that, of course, when talking about like talent across the country, Georgia, of course, creme de la creme in terms of recruiting. And, this is not a team that really hopped in the portal. I mean, yeah, they got Zachariah Branch, but, you look at some of these other teams like LSU, even Kentucky, who we're going to talk about later tonight, went and got several 4- or 5-star caliber players in the portal. Georgia's that homegrown type team. Now, the question, of course, is, will that bet end up panning out? Now, we talked about the offensive line and how it was below average, by Georgia standards. But a lot of those guys were NFL caliber players. I mean, Tate Ratledge gets drafted to the Lions. I think Dylan Fairchild to the Bengals. Even their offensive tackle is an undrafted free agent. Their left tackle from last season. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But then, of course, Jared Wilson goes to the Patriots in the 3rd round as well, I believe. The question is, it's kind of like that Texas question that I've always had about, if Arch Manning is quote unquote that good, why didn't he beat out Quinn Ewers last year? If this Georgia offensive line last season was not up to standards, why did some of these players who have been around not overtake some of those seasoned veterans? A couple of guys that I'm looking at, though, is, like you said, Ernest Green, a starter from last year, the one guy that's returning. But then Monroe Freeling, who I think is going to shoot up draft boards this upcoming year, 6'7", 315. I mean, standard body for a left tackle. And in the games that he did play, I really liked what I saw on the field. I think Georgia's offensive line will be a lot better. In my opinion, the one problem with Kirby Smart teams throughout basically his entire tenure has been kind of an Alabama issue that they had in the mid-2010s. They had the Greg McElroys and the A.J. McCarrons, and those were really good for winning national championships early on in the Saban era. They're the game manager. They're not necessarily a game maker or a point guard. And so you see in the mid-2010s, the Jake Coker thing kind of worked. The Blake Sims thing didn't pan out as they wanted it to. They lose to Ohio State in the playoffs. That was an ugly game, but I digress. But then they finally transition after Jalen Hurts to point guard type quarterbacks. That's Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. And they were extremely successful with those guys. I mean, they made it to, I think, 4 or 5 national titles within that stretch. That's where I think Georgia has had their issue. They're stuck in kind of the past. Kirby Smart, he won those national championships with Alabama under McElroy and McCarron. And to me, Gunnar Stockton, Stetson Bennett, Jake Fromm, from the early parts of the Kirby era, those all, fit the mold to me of Greg McElroy, A.J. McCarron. Maybe Gunnar Stockton is that Tua, is that Mac Jones, the distributor to a playmaker like Zachariah Branch. The question, though, is that the offense that they're going to run? Because what we saw last season was definitely not that. Now, earlier, Carden, you made the observation that you kind of don't get the Carson Beck hate. Neither do I. I think he's a really talented quarterback, and I think Georgia made a mistake moving off of him in the offseason. Now, was that because Miami just offered him so much money that Georgia couldn't match it? Maybe, but I didn't really see any reports out there about Georgia making some, high-octane effort trying to keep him. So I'm kind of concerned as it sits right now with this Georgia offense. Like, you look at some of the other extremely successful teams over the last, 7-8 seasons. Alabama, Ohio State, even Michigan has produced offensive skill players that end up transitioning to the NFL. Where the college football game, of course, is independent from the NFL, but the Devontae Smiths, the Garrett Wilsons, outside of maybe George Pickens, who really didn't play that much at Georgia, I haven't seen one of those guys with the Bulldogs. And maybe Zachariah Branch is that guy, but last year as kind of a gadget guy, honestly, extremely good playmaker, no doubt, but not necessarily that X receiver, the number one target on a team. Can he fill that hole that Georgia needs outside of their run game? Those are my thoughts about their offense going forward.
I agree with that for sure, because you definitely think about Georgia offenses and you just think ground and pound. You can name
Yep.
running back for days. That's just what they're built on. So I agree that the wide receiver position has not been a staple. And you even said, George Pickens wasn't not really to hang your hat on the career he had at Georgia. Not that it was bad, but it's not one that's going to go down in the record books
Right.
forever.
Right.
So you are 100% right about that. That is a big question, but that's 100% what Kirby Smart does. He is a ground and pound, just physical, relentless on both sides of the ball, and that's why he's been successful. But with the game changing how it is, they definitely have to maximize where they can, because if they have another season like last year running the ball, they're going to be in some trouble again. Because I say in trouble again, they won the league last year, but to what they can be, because they were 15th in the SEC in rushing offense last year, and that's just unheard of, especially under Kirby Smart.
Mm-hmm.
But the Roderick Robertson guy, and they got Josh McCray out of Illinois, but Roderick Robertson, there's been a lot of hype around him from beat reporters out of camp. I expect him to have a fantastic year. There was people that believed he should have been running back 1 over ETN last year, so I'm excited to see if all the hype comes true for that kid. But I'd like to get you some more thoughts from you, Cam, before we go over to the defense.
Yeah, and I want to make one more point about the offensive line, and Alexander, you highlight this too, of Georgia not really hitting the portal, and they really didn't do that for the offensive line, which to me is telling me that they really believe in their internal development and some of those maybe a little bit younger players that weren't able to surpass some of the veterans last year. I think obviously they didn't go in and try to get high price free agents out of the portal, so to speak. They trust their internal development, and I do. That does give me some confidence that I think they are confident that those guys are willing to, or they're able to step in, ready to go from the start of this season. Because, like I said, and you highlight it perfectly too. Had draft picks on the offensive line, just for whatever reason, it didn't click to the level that you've seen from Georgia in the past. And I like your guys' take with Carson Beck. I did think a lot of the hate with him was misplaced. Because really he didn't really have the level of supporting cast around him that maybe there had been in some prior years. So I think a lot of that, to me, was him kind of forcing things a lot, trying to take chances, make plays as guys were dropping the ball left and right. The offensive line wasn't quite to that level. So I felt like a lot of his decisions were forced a little bit, trying to make a little bit too much happen. And I think Gunnar Stockton, I don't think is going to be in that situation this year. I think he's in a much better place surrounding him. And so I'm excited to see what he can do. And like you said, Alexander, is he going to be that game manager, or can he be a guy that's a true playmaker for them?
Yeah, like pro comparisons that I look at, Georgia to me has had a lot of San Francisco 49ers type offenses, West Coast offenses that are really play action centric and revolve a lot around winning at the line of scrimmage. And so when you see them on the field, when the talent's there, man, it is unbelievable. It's undeniable. But the 49ers to me have, in the Kyle Shanahan era, have been a front-running team. They're not a team that if they go down 21-0, they're not getting out of that hole. I mean, exactly Alabama last year. You go down in that hole. They were able to get out of it kind of with Carson Beck. I mean, just slinging the rock everywhere. But you lose that in the portal. Is that something that Gunnar Stockton can do? What I think they should be transitioning to is that Sean Payton offense with the Broncos and with the Saints. Like Drew Brees, Bo Nix can be those, like, get the ball to a playmaker, let them do something type guy. The pound the rock stuff has been great for Georgia. I mean, it won them 2 national championships. I'm not sitting here and saying, it's a broken system. But I don't necessarily think when you have to play an SEC schedule with Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss on there, and then you have to go to the college football playoff and play in Ohio State, or you go up and you play a Notre Dame who can kind of match you physically. You got to have that secondary factor in the pass game that can help you get out of some of these ruts. And, man, I'm really curious to see that this year. I think one more thing I wanted to put as of note, the offensive line, to me, their main issue last year was their health concerns. I mean, point exactly to Tate Ratledge. I think right before the Alabama game, he had that high ankle sprain versus Kentucky, had the tightrope surgery, and he was just never the same after that. And then you see the Georgia offensive line. I think they tried 6 or 7 different lineups last season. So I think the continuity and chemistry, whenever I'm doing my college football previews for the teams that I'm covering, that is something that I really like to harp on. Do you have, especially an offensive line group that has played together time in and time out on the road, at home, even in neutral sites? It's unbelievably important to get those reps. So this is probably the biggest part of their offense that I think is like a wild card. They've got the talent. Like, it's there. 4 or 5 star caliber offensive linemen. The one thing that I will hang my hat on with Georgia, unlike their skill group, they produce offensive linemen, like, consistently. That's no doubt. And so that's why I was talking about a guy like Monroe Freeling, who we really haven't seen that much. I think he's started 5 games in his college career, but that's somebody that I kind of look at and compare to an Emory Jones from LSU last season. So super fired up to see what that offensive line looks like.
Absolutely. And to be real, if their offense has struggles, just like always, their defense is going to be able to bail them out. That's what you know Kirby Smart for. And again, there's lots of reports coming out of camp that this may be his deepest and most talented linebacker roster that he's had in the 10 years he's been there, which is crazy to say because you can sit there and name linebackers that were all Americans and early draft picks. So if that comes to be true, I think the defense will bode well, and I think that Georgia can make a run and will make a run at the end of the year. You got some guys up front, though, that really haven't played a whole lot. Some guys have got some snaps, but they haven't played a ton. Jordan Hall, Xavier McLeod, Justin Green's a redshirt freshman that's expected to play some this year. Joseph Jonah Ajani, I don't know if he goes by all 3 of those names, but that's what I'm calling him. He's also a redshirt freshman. He's going to get some playing time this year. Christian Miller is really their most, set guy on the defense, the most experienced guy on the defense.
Yep.
There's not really much question marks about. You know what you're going to get from him play in and play out. The rest of the guys on that front are pretty young and inexperienced, so I think that's a big question mark. But Kirby recruits so well there that I don't think that it's that big of a deal. That they're just as good at playmakers, if not better, than the guys before them, and they're sitting back learning from those guys, and they're getting coached for a year or two. I don't think it's going to skip a beat. It's not going to be your traditional replacing guys because, it's just reload at Georgia just like it is at a few other places around the SEC. But the linebacker room is what I want to focus on a lot. Gabe Harris, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, all those guys have played a ton of snaps for Georgia. Everybody in that wears a Georgia ball cap, they know their name. And then you got Elo Madozi coming over from Army, was a big-time producer at Army last year. And then a lot of hype and praise and expectation coming from Justin Williams and Chris Cole. Both of those guys played some last year, but they're expected to, if not, be obviously step better, but potentially the best linebackers on the team over Gabe Harris and C.J. Allen, which is saying a lot. Mm-hmm. These young guys have a lot of expectations. I mean, Chris Cole was the SEC All-Freshman in 2024, so it's not surprising that, they're getting this hype because of the production they had last year when they got their chances. But for you're expecting them to be the best in the room, that's saying something with how this linebacker room is developed or being built, with 2 of your younger guys expected to be 2 of the best players. And then obviously their defensive backfield is insane. They only added 2 transfers on defense, or 3, Elo Modozi, Adrian Maddox, who's coming over to play some defensive back from UAB, and Zion Branch, the brother of the receiver, that's coming over as well. So outside of that, it's really, like you mentioned when you started, it's homegrown talent like we've gotten used to. What's crazy when you're covering all these teams going in and you go look at their roster from last year to this year and you're seeing who's transferred in, transferred out, every single school has got multiple guys and you're having to go back and forth. Georgia was one of the easiest rosters to look into because I didn't leave the page too many times. You know what I mean? So that says a lot about what they got going on there internally. So I expect these guys to just step up and play. You got redshirt freshman Ellis Robinson expected to play some of the defensive backfield. True freshman Dominique Kelly is expected to make an immediate impact as a true freshman, which is going to be tough to do. And then, KJ Bolden's coming back, Ja'Cory Thomas, and then, like I said, Todd Robinson's also going to be a true freshman that's coming in, expected to play a lot. So the defensive backfield really has a lot of question marks, just in the sense of we haven't seen them play a whole lot of snaps, just like the front, the defensive line does. But the linebacker core is what's always led and been the anchor of Kirby Smart's defenses. So I don't think that they're going to be in any trouble or missing assignments or things along those lines. I think this defense could be one of the best we've seen under Kirby Smart in the 10 years he's been there. Crazy that this has already been a decade. This is his 10th season.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, kind of looking at their defense, Gordon, I think you laid it out nicely too. I mean, obviously it's kind of a theme here. You may not have the stars of a couple years ago and those just absolutely loaded rosters, but I mean, you look at, you've got high-level veterans at each level of the defense. In the defensive front, the linebacking core, definitely one of the best in the country. The secondary, Dalen Everett's back there, who's a veteran. You got KJ Bolden's just a true sophomore. And, I mean, what's the rate of guys that started as true freshmen for Nick Saban and Kirby Smart? Like, that rate of going in the first round eventually, it's got to be like over 90% or something. It's got to be crazy. So obviously he has a bright future ahead of him. If you can come in and start as a true freshman, especially at defensive back on one of those two coaches' defenses, like, you're an absolute dude. There's 100%. No doubt about it. So I don't know what that rate is, but it's got to be high. So yeah, you look at it, just solid veterans. They brought in some key transfers with a linebacker from Army, adding to that linebacker group. But, I mean, honestly, there's really not like a crazy preview to break up. It's like, you know, Georgia has great players, man. I mean, they have great players all over the roster. Defensively, it's exactly what you would expect a Kirby Smart defense, a Glenn Schumann defense to look like. Like, this is what the roster is going to look like most of the time. And, I think veterans in all three levels. And, yeah, I think they're going to be, as normally, they're going to be one of the top defenses in America.
I kind of have very similar thoughts. You know, my questions about, you know, the Kirby Smart Georgia teams, it's never about the defense. Like, they perform top notch. It's undeniable, like, what he's able to do. I mean, he's a former DB himself, so he gets defenses. I mean, he learned from Saban as well. You know, the experience is off the chart. All right, so two guys that I'm super excited for. Already mentioned C.J. Allen, middle linebacker. I think one staple of Kirby defenses, Nick Saban defenses, of course, those middle linebackers. Roquan Smith, moving back to the Alabama days, you know, C.J. Mosley, Rolando McClain. Those are the type of guys that Kirby and Nick installed because they're very focused in the secondary. Both of those, Nick Saban, former DB, Kirby Smart, former DB, really got their coaching starts, coaching defensive backs. And so that's where they like to, you know, that's their bread and butter, I guess. And KJ Bolden he's the Kirby guy. I mean, you look back 5 years ago during the COVID season, Malachi Moore, that's a Nick Saban guy. Caleb Downs, once again, a Nick Saban guy. And I think if it wasn't for Caleb Downs in the freshman season that he had at Alabama a couple seasons ago, we'd be talking about KJ Bolden, like, as one of the best safeties in college football as a true sophomore. I mean, 59 tackles, but not only that, we saw him kind of all over the field. He's a box specialist. He had a sack, an interception, a couple pass deflections, and a forced fumble last season. That's the kind of role that Kirby loves. Malachi Starks, in those 4-2-5 looks, the quote-unquote, like, star position they call it, it's basically their free safety who roams, like hybrid linebacker safety type guy. KJ Bolden is that. Like, he can do it all. And that's what I'm really excited for. The one concern, though, that I do have, you mentioned it, this front four really is kind of green. Not a ton of experience. And the sacks from last year, pressure on the quarterback, was pretty low to Kirby standards. Sack percentage-wise, they were 33rd in the country. And a lot of their passing statistics defensively were not top 5 in the SEC, which is pretty surprising. Once again, kind of similar to what I was talking about with their offensive line. A lot of that can be chalked up to injuries and lack of consistency. Like Mykel Williams, one of the prime candidates for that. A first-round pick, you know, you see the talent, but he missed a ton of time. And then when he played on the field, he was playing injured. So one guy that that just affects the entire front of the pass rush, I guess. And so Jalen Walker as well, another guy that goes to the NFL. I mean, with Kirby teams, Nick Saban teams, you talk about, how many guys did they lose to the NFL? They lost quite a few last year, but I'm very confident in their ability to reload. They have the requisite talent already on the team. They pull that guy from Army and a couple other transfers, but I'm pretty solidified that Kirby Smart defenses are not going to, get out of hand and have like a 2020 LSU COVID season where they were allowing everybody to score 45 points on them. So, yeah, I have my faith there with Kirby Smart and this Georgia team.
Absolutely. I think, in my opinion, the biggest thing on offense is, can you run the football this year? I think with this offensive line, they're going to be able to. And then, like you said, defense is really, both of you said, really, there's no really question that the defense is going to show up and they're going to do their job and they're going to do what you expect them to do. Everybody has busted every once in a while, but they're going to meet the standard pretty much every single game, every single snap. But jumping into their schedule, me and Cam have said on here for years now that we're going to have to tweak our expectations for final records and all that because of the expanded playoff, the expanded conferences, things along those lines. The 10-2s, the new 11-1s, what we've been saying. We've been saying there's not going to be many 11-1 teams, not going to be many 12-0 teams. I think this might be one of the 11-1 teams. Realistically, I think that Georgia probably goes 10-2 because there's a team in here that's probably going to get them outside of the one I have picked. But I think that they're really the only toss-up game that I really am just struggling with that I would probably give them a loss is Texas. I know they're at home versus Texas, but I think that's the team that's going to give them the biggest question marks later in the year. Are guys healthy? The only reason that I say it's not a toss-up for Bama for me is it's at Georgia. It's earlier in the year, so you can almost guarantee that there's not going to be many injuries. And this is the first game in 10 years, the first game under Kirby Smart, that Georgia gets to play Bama at Georgia. They've played each
That's
other
crazy.
thousands of times, but in the 10 years he's been there, Bama has never gone to Athens and played. So I think that's going to be one of the toughest environments to play in. I think things are going to be, obviously in favor of Georgia noise-wise and things along those lines. But Kirby Smart is one of the greatest motivators with the negative stuff. Like, they picked us to go 7-5, which nobody did, but that's what you say. Or you go pick up an article of somebody saying that you're going to lose to so-and-so or things along those lines. He's great at using the disrespect, I guess you'd call it, as motivation. And I think that's what he's going to use, especially in that Alabama week. So I'm giving them the win over Alabama. I think that was another big question mark. I find it hard to believe that any other team on their schedule is really going to give them any troubles. They're going to be better up and down than Tennessee. They go to Tennessee. They're going to be better than Auburn up and down. They go to Auburn. I know it's going to be a night game. It's crazy there in Jordan-Hare. A lot of stuff's happened in that rivalry. I still just think head to toe they're better. I don't know that Auburn can stay on the field with them for 4 quarters. I give them that win as well. And then they go to Mississippi State. And they play Georgia Tech at a neutral site. So Florida at a neutral site. So I think Texas, even though, again, it is at home, I think that if Texas is that good at that time, we'll for real know it's not going to be any more early on Arch Manning. He's going to have so many snaps under his belt at that time. He'll be a vet at that point. You know what I mean? So I expect Texas to be their hardest game. Not that Bama's not going to give them trouble, but if I'm picking right now, I'm giving the win to Georgia and not calling the Bama game a toss-up.
All right.
Yeah, I think when you look at the schedule, is it fair to call it like one of the easiest?
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing.
I will say last year, you look at this, it's just flipped from last year. They did have to go on the road to all their tough matches.
Yep.
So I think they deserve the break, but yes, I do think it's an easier schedule than some in the conference for sure.
Yeah. No, like this schedule has Alabama, Texas, Florida, obviously, Ole Miss. Like it's the easiest tough schedule I've seen. You know what I mean? Like I'm not in any way saying it's easy because it's not. it is one of the lighter ones in the SEC, but it just goes to show you the overall strength of the league. When I think they're like ranked maybe the 11th toughest schedule in the conference, something like that, but it's like 15th overall basically, or top 20, something like that. So different publications, but I mean, I looked at the schedule, and I think a lot of it, as you highlight, is the location of these games. Last year was just a brutal road schedule, going to Alabama, to Texas, to Ole Miss. You got all those at home this year, so it's a good year to be a Georgia season ticket holder for sure.
Oh yeah,
that's a beautiful year to be that. But you got Florida, a neutral site game, as you mentioned, Georgia Tech as well. You've only got 3 true road games in the entire season, so Georgia fans, don't come at me. I'm by no means saying it's an easy schedule, but to have those amount of elite teams on it, I don't know, it just feels a little bit softer. But a lot of that is just how good Georgia is too, because a lot of these games would be tougher if it was Mississippi State or Kentucky here in a little bit. But no, I think you're right on the nose. Honestly, I'd say 10-2, 11-1. Honestly, I think worst case, I can't see them if just things went way off the rails. I just can't see them being worse than 8 or 9 wins, maybe if things really.
There's no way they only win 8. They're getting minimum 9 for sure.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we're talking about things really going south here. I can't foresee that happening. So yeah, I'm in that 10 to 11 win range, like you said. The Texas and the Alabama games. But getting both those at home, I think they split those. And then, like you said, you got the Florida game, which was a tough one a year ago. Florida's in a better position this year. I think that's going to be the most exciting cocktail party we've had since 2020. So, Georgia Tech, look how Georgia Tech played them a year ago inside the hedges. I hate that game's not at Georgia Tech. I hate it.
I agree. I wanted it so bad.
I don't know why we're trying to go all neutral sites here. That's a college football
I don't
problem,
like that Georgia and Florida play a neutral site game. Like I know that's how it's always been. I don't want them to play at each other's stadiums, man.
Can you imagine them going to the swamp this year?
What I'm saying,
I mean, that would be off the chain, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Man, you guys have got me fired up, and I can't wait for this season. It's going to be so good.
I swear.
All right. I'm not a Kirby hater, but last year, before the season started, I came out with a video. I said they were going 9-3. I said they were going to lose the Alabama game, they were going to lose the Texas game on the road, and they were going to lose the Ole Miss game. And I said the Ole Miss was going to shock the world and dog walk them, and they did. They surprised me in the Texas game. Really, they didn't really surprise me. Texas really let me down. I mean, they played God all. I mean, they didn't only hand it to Georgia, but they threw in $100 bill on top of it. It was a really embarrassing game for the program. Looking at this schedule, I think you guys nailed it on the head. Like, you got some tough teams on here. You got Alabama, you got Texas, but you got them both at home. You paid your dues last season, and they went 10-2 and won the conference. This year, I think every SEC team, situations, when I describe those, are do you have Georgia's schedule or do you have Oklahoma's schedule? If Georgia was playing Oklahoma's schedule this year, I could 1,000% see them going 8-4, maybe 7-5 if the wheels fell off the wagon. But because, I mean, of course, your typical low FBS, FCS opponents, Austin Peay, Marshall, I mean, is there any conversation that's longer than a millisecond about those? But at Tennessee, if Nico was on that team, I would say maybe watch out. I like Tennessee's secondary, but I would 100% give him that game. Ty Simpson, I think outside of Florida State, that's going to be his first true road game. It's going to be his first road game in the SEC. That's going to be a scary sight to see. I think they can absolutely win that one. Kentucky, not much to talk about there. Auburn, now look, I know you're an Auburn guy. Jordan Hare is haunted, ladies and gentlemen, especially at night. Nick
Saban said it too.
I know. If the GOAT says it, it's got to be true. Look, in the last 12 years, Auburn is 12-12 against top 25 opponents, and the vast majority of those games, they're not ranked. So, I mean, we all remember the kick six and, the tip catch against Georgia back in 2013 or 2014. Will we see that magic again? I mean, we saw it versus Texas A&M last year. It's possible, but with the way that Hugh Freeze is currently treating his quarterback room, I just can't say that I see it right now. So I'll give Georgia the dub there. Ole Miss, this is not the Ole Miss team from last year. I mean, they lost so much offensive talent. I think that's an easy win. The one loss that I do have them on for sure, I'm calling this before the season starts, Florida Gators. If DJ Lagway is healthy, I think they get him. Billy Napier's got all the momentum in the world. I'm really high on Florida. Then, of course, at Mississippi State. I mean, are we sure that Mississippi State, if they went head-to-head with Toledo again, would they win? I don't necessarily think so. So that's an easy win. And then Texas at home. I think you said, Carden, that you like Texas in that game. Steve Sarkisian, to me, has yet to prove that he can win the big game. Fell short against Washington. Fell short against Ohio State. Kirby last year twice. This is kind of like Kirby Smart with his Nick Saban problem, 1-6 versus Alabama. I have the same thing about Steve Sarkisian. Can he be the best coach in college, or not in college football, but in the SEC? As of right now, Kirby holds that crown. I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. So I've got Georgia winning that one. Charlotte, nothing to talk about, and then Georgia Tech. Brent Key, a Hewitt-Trussville High School alumni from my hometown. I love the way they play football over there. They get after the line of scrimmage, but I think last year was a little bit more of a fluke than we'd like to believe. I think, of course, in a neutral site, they can win that one. So 11-1. And they're going to the SEC championship again. But here's the thing. I don't think that they're a top 3 team in the SEC, but they're going to be in the SEC championship, which is kind of like how I thought about them last year. I don't necessarily think that they were the best team in the SEC, but yet they're crowned the champion due to the fact that they were able to win the games on their schedule. And that's what I think is going to happen this year.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. We are also both pretty high on Florida. We think they're going to have a really good year this year.
Man.
So, I don't hate that pick. I really don't. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Georgia – I think they're going to have at least one loss. It wouldn't surprise me if they beat Texas because, Texas is fairly inexperienced on the opposite side of the ball. So it wouldn't shock me. But for sure, I think they're dropping one just because it's going to be so hard to go undefeated like we've talked about.
Yeah, man, it's the SEC. It's almost like the NFL nowadays. It's almost like any given Sunday. I mean, would I be shocked if, Auburn or Tennessee beats them? I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised, I guess. But I wouldn't be like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe that happened. So, yeah, I mean, it's the SEC. 11-1's a great record for a regular season.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, y'all ready to talk a little Kentucky football now, boys?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Let's hit the flip-flop.
We're heading up to Lexington to talk some Kentucky football. I'll just go ahead and pose the question right at the gate before we jump in the roster and all that. Has Mark Stoops hit his peak in Lexington? And, boys, the floor is yours to answer that question.
Carden, of course, be my guest. Head on.
I think that's a great question. And I think he hit his peak, 3 years ago probably, whenever they won 10 games and then 9 games or whatever it was. That was probably his peak. Especially with where the game's going now and how recruiting is now, I just think it's hard for him to get the same type of cash that other teams in the conference have to get the higher recruits. And then when he does get the high recruits, it's tough for him to keep them there. I mean, he's lost some guys to the portal. Some of the guys, some fans aren't sad to see go, but I think, he's lost some of his bigger players, like, a Dan Key, a Barry and Brown to the portal. So I think that's probably why I say, not necessarily because of his coaching, but just because of the situation he's in at Kentucky. Kentucky's not a blue blood football team. Harder to get recruits there, harder to keep recruits there, especially in the day of the money. So I think that's a fair question, and I think the answer is yes. I think he's peaked out as a stock, I guess, and he's on the downfall now.
Much agreed. For some reason, every now and again, everybody kind of gets low on Stoops. I don't know if y'all know this. I'm sure that y'all do because, y'all's ball knowledge is vast. But Stoops is the most tenured coach in the SEC. Longest tenure. Yeah. Extremely impressive what he's been able to do at Kentucky. 2 10-win seasons, a bunch of seasons where he goes over 500. And it seems that like when everybody gets low on Kentucky, that's when they shock you and they go out and be like 8-5 or 7-6 or something like that. But this season, given the schedule, I think this might be the end of his run. I mean, last year was really disappointing. I thought before last season, that talent-wise might have been the best team that he has had at Kentucky. And, they had a really tough schedule, but they just kind of fell flat on their face. I mean, the offense was one of the worst in the country, but the defense had tons of players that, they're not 4- and 5-star rated out of high school, but if you put them in the portal like they went, like Barryon Brown, Dane Key, and Keyshawn Silver, a guy I'll talk about in a little bit. But these are highly rated players. I mean, Maxwell Hairston, first-round pick, he's gone. I think this is it. I think this is finally where Kentucky says we're ready to move on. The question is where do they go from here? How do you get an upgrade from Stoops? Because I think he's a good coach. But is he a great coach?
Yeah, that's my question. I don't know. I see where you're coming from. I just don't know that they get rid of him for that reason alone. I don't know that they think or that they know they can go get someone just as good or better, cheaper. I really am not sure. I think he's probably safe just because of that. Like, who are you going to get that wants to come to Kentucky?
Yep.
And I'm sure they could get somebody that's never been a head coach before, but that usually doesn't go over well in the SEC. So I don't know. I don't know that they think they can go get somebody any better because, I mean, at times they've been really, really good. And then at times they have been, bottom of the barrel. You look at their offense last year, they were 14th in passing offense and 12th in rushing offense, 15th overall in total offense. So that's not what you're used to seeing from a successful Mark Stoops team.
Yep.
It's a lot like Georgia. It's bread and butter, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. But one thing you could always guarantee and hang your hat on about Kentucky, especially under Stoops, the last 12 seasons, is they are not going to give up, and that is they just did not fit that mold last year. They were going to beat you to the end of the game, but last year, midway through, I wrote some numbers down here. Midway through, you could see the team just laid down and they quit.
Yep.
So week 3, I believe they played Georgia. Week 2 or 3. Georgia ran the ball for 102 yards, so nothing crazy, but not bad on both sides, but pretty good football. Then they played Ohio. They rushed for 113 yards, and then in week 5 or 6 they played Vandy, and from here is when it starts going downhill because they had lost some games. They were kind of getting embarrassed at times. So Vandy, who was the 13th rushing offense in the SEC, ran for 145 yards against them. Florida, who was the 9th rushing offense, ran for 197 yards on them. Auburn, who was the 7th, so middle of the pack in the SEC, they ran for 326 yards on them. Tennessee, who granted was the first rushing offense last year, they ran for 185 yards on them. And then the 10th rushing SEC team, Texas, ran for 250 rushing yards against them.
Man.
And they ended the year by allowing Louisville to run for 358 yards against them.
Yeah.
So you could just see in the numbers each game after about week 5 or 6 when they realized that we are just not that great of a football team, they did the opposite of what Florida did. Florida struggled early last year, but then they rallied the troops and they came back and they got better week by week and they were one of the best teams at the end of the year. Kentucky did quite the opposite, and they played Georgia really well. Almost gave Georgia a loss there early in the year. They played some other really good teams really well, beat Ole Miss. And then you turn around and you look against other games, and then they don't even have a pulse out there. So I just saw them, in my opinion, lay down and quit halfway through the year. We're up on Auburn at Kentucky. I was at the game. They were up on them 10-0 and had a turnover or something along those lines, a big fourth down stop, whatever it was. They were up double digits on Auburn early at home, and they got the ball back with a chance to go up 17-0, and they could not capitalize. And then they didn't score again the rest of the game, and Auburn scored 24 unanswered and ran for 300-plus yards. So they just, when something didn't go their way, they laid down and they were beat right then. So I think that he's gone out and got some guys through the portal. You're going to see on offense a name that we are all too familiar with here in the SEC, Zach Calzada. Former Auburn player, Incarnate Word. So he's finally coming back. I feel like he's been in college longer than I was in college. But he's going to be expected to be the starting quarterback. And then you got Dante Dowdle, transfer, played at Oregon and Nebraska, coming over. had 614 yards and 12 touchdowns last year out of the backfield. Then you got Jamarian Wilcox returning. The wide receiver room is where he really upgraded. Yeah, he lost Dan Key and Barry and Brown, but I think he upgraded. Not necessarily from game production, because a lot of these guys have not played a whole lot of snaps, but they went out and got. Kendrick Law could never find his way on the field consistently at Alabama. Troy Stellato played at Clemson, same situation. Good player, had some good games when he got his opportunity, but really just couldn't find his way consistently on the field. You got Jamori Macklin, he's returning. He's a former transfer, but he's returning. J.J. Hester coming over from Oklahoma. And then you got David Washington and Hardly Gilmore, and neither one of them guys have played much. Outside of the transfers, they're not returning anybody with more than 10 receptions. So there's a lot of question marks in the wide receiver room just solely off of inexperience. But I think that talent-wise, they have made the room better. So if your quarterback can be protected by your offensive line, they went out and got some guys from the offensive line. That was a big problem of theirs last year. They just gave up pressures. Not necessarily a whole lot of sacks. I don't know their sack numbers off the top of my head that they allowed, but they allowed pressure all season. I mean, I can't think of his name. Their quarterback last year, number 16.
Brock
Vandegrift.
Vandegrift, yeah, Brock Vandegrift.
He was on his rear end every single play, it seemed like. I mean, he got beat to hell last season.
Yeah, he did not have fun.
They run the football, so offensive line was bad. They go out, get Shiaz Pete, which seems like the name's backwards to me. I feel like it should be Pete Shiaz.
I agree.
Pete, at left tackle, played 4 years at New Mexico State, played a lot of football. He's going to come in and play left tackle for him. Then you got Jagger Burton returning, played thousands of snaps. Alex Walschlager coming over from Bowling Green. He's got 2,300-plus career snaps. Jalen Farmer started every game for him last year, and according to their website, only gave up 1 sack. And then you got Joshua Braun coming over from former Arkansas and Florida offensive lineman. Has played a ton of football, missed some games due to injury, but has played a ton both at Florida and at Arkansas. So they've definitely beefed up their offensive line, and they're better. But as a core group, are they going to be able to play well together? And that's, the question mark we're still waiting to find out. But just like, we've talked about with several teams in these previews, are they going to be able to, offensive line that's a whole ton of new faces, are they going to be able to gel together and produce what is needed to make this offense successful? And that is running the ball, creating run lanes, and then allowing your play action to take over. So I think that we're going to see a lot more commit to the run, because I think they're going to be able to do that a lot better this year offensively.
Mind if I hop in on this one?
Absolutely.
Okay, much agreed. Bush Hamdan, offensive coordinator for them last year, his style, the way that he coaches this offense, did not fit the team last year. If you look back to where he was the year before, he was at Boise State, and I think I credit him for unlocking the Ashton Genty that we all saw this previous season. Boise State was a top 6 or 7 rushing team in 2023, and that's what I thought that they tried to do with Kentucky. I mean, now we talk about that they're 97 in yards per rush, but they were 39th in the country in rush play percentage. 56% of their plays were run plays. So even though their offensive line did not play great, I mean, they were trying to run the ball into the damn dirt. It was a sight to see, to say the least. But you mentioned all these offensive line guys that they've brought in and the guys that are coming back. Seasoned veterans and guys that know or come from teams that pound the rock. Sam Pittman, speaking of Arkansas, Joshua Braun, that's the guy I'm highest on in this offensive line. A 31-game starter. I think he started a lot at guard, and now he's moving. I think the depth chart's got him at right tackle. But regardless, a bruiser. And then probably overall in the offense, the guy that I'm highest on is Dante Dowdle from Nebraska. Now, talk about running the ball into the dirt. Dante Dowdle is that guy. 3rd and 1 or 1st and goal or 2nd and goal at the 1-yard line, you're toting the rock with this guy. 12 touchdowns last season, even though he was in a running back by committee room. He was the situational running back. I think he'll end up being the primary back here at Kentucky. Just a bruiser. Somebody that, in my opinion, I'm really high on. for non-football reasons. I played as Nebraska in EA College Football 25 Dynasty last year, and so I'm a big Dante Dowdle fan. But the way that I played with him in the video game is the way that he plays on the field. Big physical guy, and I think that's what Mark Stoops looks for in his running back. Thinking of a guy that he had from a few years ago, was it Benny Snell, right? Yeah, that was a guy, bell cow back, can tote the rock anywhere on the field. That's what I'm looking for when it comes to this Kentucky offense. Calzada, I mean, is there a school that he hasn't transferred to? Honestly, I mean, he's just been looking for it everywhere, and I give him his props. I mean, he's hungry to play. He doesn't want to go sit at Texas A&M and be the backup. So I don't know how that will pan out. I mean, I know he did really well. I forgot where he went last season.
I think it was Incarnate Ward, but I could be wrong on that.
I think that's right. I think he played well there. That's where Cam Ward also came from before he went to Washington State. So he played well there. I was very impressed with his statistics. Can he step up and play SEC football? Based off the tape from the time that he was in the SEC, the answer probably is no. But hey, maybe we're surprised. Maybe he learned something in the FCS that he can bring to the SEC. And then speaking of those receivers, I completely agree with you. I think that despite the fact that Dane Key and Barryon Brown were two of, I think, the top 5 receivers in the portal, it's not that they upgraded in terms of talent. They upgraded in terms of fit. Once again, that offensive line last year was atrocious. Vandegrift had no time to throw, and Barryon Brown is a deep ball guy. He's going to try to take the top off the defense. That's not something you can do if within 1.8 seconds you have a Georgia defensive lineman crushing your ribs in, okay?
Right.
And then Dane Key he's kind of a red zone X guy, somebody that you throw up the X to like a Des Bryant. I mean, obviously not trying to compare the two, but neither of those receiving qualities fit what this Bush Hamden team is. He is a get the ball out quickly, and I do think Zach Calzada can do that better than Brock Vandegrift. So the schedule's tough, but maybe we can see the offense make some improvements that potentially keeps the athletic director, the boosters, happy enough that they bring this squad back, this coaching staff back for maybe one more year.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on my initial question because I agree with you guys. I do think he's hit that peak. Like I don't know if we'll see another 10-win season, and I do not mean to make this Kentucky preview like a preview to Mark Stoops being shown the door because honestly I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think that's going to happen especially I was looking up the numbers, and if you guys had to guess, what do you think his buyout is right now?
How many years does he have left on his contract?
He signed through 2031.
I was about to say, I think he signed an extension right after that 10-win season.
He got a 2-year extension that was built in his contract. If he wins 9 games, he gets a year extension. If he wins 10, he gets a 2-year extension. So that's probably based off of those back-to-back 9 and 10-win seasons or double-digit win seasons that he's got extra years.
Yeah.
2031, I'm going to guess his buyout is, I don't know, $35 million.
That's pretty good. It's currently anywhere between 40 to 44 million. So it is
That's
75.
high, dude.
I know it's 75% of his remaining salary. So right now it's built in his contract. So if they fire him without cause, it's 75% of whatever his remaining salary is. That's due within 60 days of his firing. So
wait, they don't get a chance to pay him out. They have to pay him full on.
It's 75% of the remaining in 60 days.
That's
So-
and yeah.
If he
That's what I'm
has
saying.
$60 million remaining through 2031, they have to pay him. You're saying $40 to $45 million within 60 days. Okay, well he'll be the coach of Kentucky for quite some time.
That's kind of
Oh my God.
That's kind of what my point was getting to. I think he's hit his peak, but long
They can't
story
afford
short,
that.
He has more time. Is what I'm saying. He's
Yeah.
going to have time to make some changes. And if this season doesn't go, if it goes like a year ago, basically.
Wow.
Because I'm sure you guys have heard there's a new pope. There's also a recently new pope in Kentucky, and that he lives in Rupp Arena, and that's Mark Pope. And basically what I'm saying is they're not taking $40 million from him and handing it to Mark Stoops to go sit on a beach somewhere. That's what I'm saying.
I'll tell you what. I don't know if Kentucky's got a billionaire like the University of Kansas does that can just write a $300 million check, but they better start reaching out.
That is insane.
I cannot believe that. Oh, my God. Well, I was about to make a really hot take about who the new coach at Kentucky was going to be. You know what? I'll just throw it out there just because this is my wildest thought. Two guys. Number one, I think SMU is going to have a down season from last year, and so the Rhett Lashley hype is going to kind of tamper down. But Kentucky could look for him to make an upgrade. Maybe not, but another guy that has been rumored for the Arkansas job, and he's been itching to get back into coaching, and if no NFL team wants him, I think John Gruden would take this job at Kentucky.
Bring me John Gruden, man.
I would be elated. But here's the thing. I mean, Gruden to come down to coach in the SEC is one thing, but to coach at Kentucky, I mean, I think they'd have to offer him the bag. And there's no way that the athletic director is going to get away with paying Stoops $40 million and then signing Gruden to a $40 or $50 million deal. I mean, that's almost $100 million with two coaches.
Gruden might be sick enough to take a little pay cut, though.
Hey, maybe. I would be really hyped for that. But man, it looks like we're gonna see some more Mark Stoops teams roll around here for at least 2 or 3 more seasons.
So that was actually from the Sea of Blue from Kentucky from SB Nation, Kentucky's page on there. So his assistant coaches will be owed close to $11 million. So this is, I'm telling you, man.
Man, they got him locked up.
Those 9 or 10 win seasons, man. Somebody needs to go hire Mark Stoops as agent.
I was about to say
Mark Stoops' agent.
Yeah.
Is it Jimmy Sexton? Because that seems like a Jimmy Sexton deal.
That's crazy. I truly cannot believe that.
So that is crazy, dude. That his assistants would get paid $11 million. We've said it multiple times. There's no better job than being a fired college football coach.
Oh yeah.
You get a bag to walk out the door.
No, but I kind of want to bring a little something fun into it. Obviously, you hate to have those kind of talks in a season preview of a guy that's likely going to be there for several more years. But I think you guys highlight it really well, though. The offensive line was terrible a year ago. I think they made upgrades in some spots, and I think you guys are probably kind of along the same lines as me. I don't think it's going to be enough to show a huge difference in the win-loss column. I mean, at FanDuel, the over-under's 4.5. I think that's probably about in line with the quality of players they have, and then you compare that with the schedule that they've got to face this year. An extremely tough road schedule, too, man. It's super tough. But yeah, I think you guys really hit the nail on the head, but I kind of want to throw those numbers out because I didn't know they were that high. And, I think, like I said, it's going to be Mark Stoops a little while longer there in Lexington. But I'm really hopeful he can kind of right the ship a little bit and at least get back to some bowl appearances. You know, he had a couple 7-win seasons after he went 10 wins in 2021. So, And like you said, Alexander, too, like the times that you start doubting him is the times where he kind of gets it back together.
Yep.
Is able to rise to that occasion. I don't know if that's going to be this year, but if they did overachieve a little bit, I don't think I would be surprised either.
What's your
I wouldn't be shocked.
On the defense. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, his first 3 seasons there were rough, 2-10, 5-7, 5-7. But since then, I think he's only had 2 losing seasons in the next 11 or next 10 years. So, I mean, 8 out of 10 winning seasons, especially at a program like Kentucky. I mean, off the top of my head, I can name 8 SEC schools that are definitively a better football university than Kentucky is. So the fact that he's able to go in and year out and get to a bowl game playing in the toughest conference in college football for the last 25 years, to me is really impressive. This is a guy who, if he were to get fired, I think he would get immediate calls from any ACC school that was looking for a coach, any Big 12 school, even a school like Northwestern, who I think is going to be looking to move on from their coach. I think his name is David Braun. I can't think of his name. I think that's right off the top of my head. he fits that kind of Pat Fitzgerald role, who was at Northwestern. They're not a team that you expect to ever win the conference. They're not a team that you ever expect to, potentially make the college football playoff. But that's when they get you. I mean, last year, that Georgia game, I believe, was kind of a nightmare for the Georgia Bulldogs. That's when Tate Ratledge got hurt. Kentucky gave them hell. I think it was, oh, man, I can't remember the player off the top of my head. Arkansas wide receiver who ended up panning out really well in the NFL did a podcast interview a couple of years ago, and he said that the Mark Stoops teams, they weren't the toughest opponent in terms of talent, but after every single time that they played them, the ice baths were endless. They bruise you up. They want every last bit of you. They're hungry for wins each and every time. Now, we talked earlier about how they kind of laid down last season. That is an anomaly to me out of all these Mark Stoops teams. A lot of these locker rooms have loved these guys, sworn by these guys. I'm actually, I know one of their backup quarterbacks from a few years ago, and, he never had a single bad thing to say about Mark Stoops. So, I mean, the success rate there in terms of wins, the ceiling's 10. I mean, honestly, are we ever going to see an 11-win Kentucky team? Probably not. But the floor there is obviously still really low. I mean, they're down there with Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, 3, 4, maybe 5-win team. That's what I'm thinking. But, yeah, we could talk about the defense real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Cam. Jump into it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's kind of the overarching theme for me is, they started out strong a year ago defensively. But like you said, they just laid down. There was no resistance in the second half of the season. So on their defensive line, to me, what they were giving up on the ground, especially in the second half of the season, as we highlighted, like they can really only get better. They went heavy defensive line in the transfer portal. I think the linebackers should be pretty decent. Overall, they returned 3 starters in the secondary. So I think should be better overall numbers than a year ago because, like I said, that was such an anomaly, like you said, Alexander, with the way they just didn't give any resistance the second half of the season. It was like you guys said, it was almost like they mailed it in, what they were giving up on the ground, and that's not the hallmark of a Mark Stoops team, and especially a Mark Stoops defense. I mean, this guy is known to being one of the better defensive coaches in the country, so even not having top shelf talent, but he always gets the most out of that talent, and has had some high level draft picks there at Kentucky. So I just want to see them put it together for a full season and not give up on the ground what they gave in the second half of last year, because that was like I said, even not having top level talent in the SEC and in college football, but that was not a Kentucky type of defense in the second half of last year.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, they were 15th rushing defense along with 14th rushing offense, so that doesn't pair well. But they were the 4th passing defense in the SEC, and they return a lot of their defensive backfield. DJ Waller, J.Q. Hardaway, Terrion Nichols, and then they got Kevis Thomas coming over from Maryland, Ty Bryant, Jordan Lovett, Nasir Addison, and then a true freshman expected to play there, getting a lot of buzz out of camp, is Martellus Carter. So I think secondary, they're going to be just as good and not really skip a beat there. But the front seven's got to create a little bit of pass rush. It was almost non-existent for their defense last year. So if they can create a little bit of pass rush, it'll just make that passing defense even better because it helps. It gives the safeties a little bit of breath. We've talked about several times, if you can't get any pressure on the quarterback's going to pick apart any defense that you give them. So if they can get some more pressure on the quarterbacks this year, I think their defense is definitely going to take a step up. And they've added a lot of guys through the portal. They've got some guys coming back from injury that played at the back half of last year but really never got their stride. They got McKees Humphrey Grace coming over from South Dakota. He was the Mississippi Football Valley Conference Defensive Player of the Year last year on the defensive end. And so I think that they've got some good talent, not necessarily from other Power 5 programs. While some of those are littered in there, they kind of went to the lower level programs and got real dudes that were solidified performers at those locations. So I think they've got some better football players than they had on the roster last year as a whole. Definitely more of those type of guys. So I think defensively they're going to be better. And honestly, looking at this schedule, knowing what we know about all the teams that they're having to play, this was one of the tougher schedules for me to go through because I'm not huge on the toss-ups. Every team's got a toss-up, maybe one or two in their schedule. Kentucky, they've got more toss-ups than I think people think when they just initially look at their schedule. The more I've been going through this, I think the Ole Miss game's a toss-up. It's super early. They were able to beat them last year. We aren't sure what Ole Miss is going to be. On our Ole Miss preview, and honestly, if I had to bet on it today, I'd probably say Ole Miss would get the head-to-head and get the win. But it wouldn't surprise me if they go in there and they're able to beat Ole Miss again. It's going to be early. Ole Miss is not going to have a whole lot of guys that have played together for sure. So are they going to be able to be clicking on all cylinders by week 2? Are they going to be banged up from week 1? You never know. And then I think South Carolina and Georgia, they're playing on the road against those two. So I don't think that's toss-ups at all. I think the Tennessee game could potentially be a toss-up if they're able to play to their absolute best. We've seen some, like you mentioned, under Stoops over the past few years. We've seen times when he starts peaking at the right time and no one's expecting it. If that's in the middle of the season, then when they catch Tennessee, that could completely flip their whole entire season. Because I expect them to go undefeated in non-conference play outside of Louisville. I think that's a toss-up as well. I think the Vandy game, honestly, I know it's at Vandy, but I think Kentucky's going to be able to find a way to win because they're not going to lay down again. Stoops is not going to let that happen. So there's a toss-up at Vandy. I think it's a toss-up at Auburn, honestly. I think Auburn's better and will win, but I think it's a toss-up there. So there's a lot of games that can go either way. I think their absolute ceiling is probably 8-4 this year. That is performing at the absolute best. I think 8-4. I think realistically they're probably going to go 6-6, 5-7. I think if you go 500 and you're 6-6, that's
a win.
Mediocre, but also as happy as you can be as a fan.
Yep.
In my opinion, I think 7-5 is overachieving. I think 6-6 is like you met it, you did what you were supposed to do, mediocre at best, but no one's upset with you. I could see a 5-7 happening, but if they get 2 wins in conference, I think they could go 7-5, 8-4. Because if that give them a little boost, and they may be better than Louisville this year. They just got to be able to stop the run. Because last year, I laid those numbers out earlier. They weren't able to stop the run. So if they're able to do that, there's a lot of toss-up games. If the ball goes their way, or if they're clicking on all cylinders at that point in the season, they could shock a lot of teams that are looking at them right now and picking them. They might look up at the end of the year and Kentucky's vying for 8, maybe 9 wins. But I don't think they're going to get to that point. But I'd say 6-6, 7-5 if I had to put money on it today.
Okay. So they start this season off with Toledo. Look out for Toledo. Like, we talked about all these toss-up games. I think just as much, I do agree with you. I think that Ole Miss game at the beginning of the season is a toss-up game. But the same question could be said about this Toledo game, in my opinion. Now, I'm a big Jason Candle fan. Low team, group of 5 FBS schools that keep a coach around but consistently performs on the upper echelon of their conference, that brings back a lot of continuity. Tucker Gleason, their quarterback from last year, I thought he could have gone to a ACC or Big 12 school, but he sticks around with Toledo. That's a game that Kentucky could drop if this team is, falling off the momentum that they failed to get last season. If this is still the team that's going to lay down, Toledo will come in and take your lunch money. They did it versus Mississippi State last year, but I think they do take care of business there. It's really hard for me to outright say a Maction school is going to beat an SEC program. To call that would be absurd in my opinion. So as much as I don't like Lane Kiffin on the road, he has been awful at Ole Miss in terms of playing other SEC schools. Point exactly to the Florida game from last season. Ole Miss, that's the playoff game, and they just dropped the ball altogether. And I think Lane Kiffin is the number one guy to blame there. They could definitely beat the Ole Miss Rebels in that spot. But I will lean on quote-unquote talent. I think Ole Miss has still got it. So I'll go there. Eastern Michigan, of course, a win. At South Carolina, at Georgia. I don't really think there's much of a conversation to be had there. Both of these teams are vying for playoff spots. It's at home. I can't see a world where Kentucky can walk in and beat one of those teams. Texas, this game versus Texas is very similar to that Texas versus Vanderbilt game last year. Vanderbilt had come off of a couple of ugly losses, just as Kentucky's probably going to do here, but they go in and they really compete versus Texas. I think the same thing could happen right here. Texas probably is in the middle of the tough part of their schedule, and Kentucky could be a game that they're sleeping on. It's in Lexington, so maybe watch out for that game. Similarly to Tennessee, how does this team look without Nico? Does Josh Heupel is Josh Heupel able to install an offense around Joey Aguilar, in just a singular summer? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what that looks like. I'll still lean on Heupel and the offensive production that he's had. I'll give them a loss there for Kentucky. At Auburn, if this was at Kentucky, kind of like it was last year, where they get up in that lead, that's a very winnable game for Kentucky. And under Stoops, that's a game that they win. But due to the fact that it's on the road, I don't see it. Florida, I'm really high on Florida, kind of similar to South Carolina and Georgia. I think they're a playoff team. Billy Napier has not been known to disappoint in these gimme games. Florida has performed pretty well, especially offensively, like versus Mississippi State last year. They did really well on the road. I think they'll do that again versus Kentucky. At Vanderbilt or Tennessee Tech at home, FCS school, no conversation. Yeah, if they don't lose that one, maybe they will pay $40 million to say goodbye to Mark Stoops.
They might need to.
At Vanderbilt, I'm very low on Vanderbilt this year. I know they bring back Pavia and Eli Stowers, their tight end, and a lot of this other offensive skill group. I thought last year was a fluke. That's what I'm leaning on in terms of my preview about them. I've got Kentucky winning that game. And then at Louisville, a toss-up game to say the least. Now, they've done a really good job with their coaching staff and building consistency. The question mark is going to be quarterback. I believe it's Miller Moss, right? From USC is going to be their starter. I always thought he was a really talented guy. I mean, he outright beat LSU last year in that first game of the season, and he hits the portal after they want to bring in their 5-star guy. One thing that I want to mention, this is completely off topic, but a lot of these decisions that are being made about starters and bench players and getting time on the field, I think they're financially based now. Miller Moss was not a guy that was making a lot of NIL money, but I can't remember the name of that recruit off the top of my head at USC, but they kind of paid him a bag. And so maybe they kick Miller Moss to the curb, because can you really justify paying somebody $2-3 million to ride the bench behind Miller Moss, even though he's better? That's something to look at here at almost every school, including Kentucky. But with that Louisville game, I think because it's at Louisville, I'll lean towards a loss. So I'm kind of low on Kentucky this year, which I said once you start doubting them, they're going to perform well. I got a 4-8, so let's see if they can prove me wrong.
Yeah, I've got them probably. I probably got them 4-8, 5-7 area. I think you guys highlighted it perfectly with some of the wins early in the season, like that Toledo game. I was looking at the line as you were going through it. That's only a 7.5 point line.
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
That's closer than people might think it would be. I think y'all were dead on the money about the Ole Miss game early. I lean Ole Miss, but I think it's very much in the toss-up category for sure. And then, like you said, they're going to take a couple on the chin there. At South Carolina, at Georgia is going to be extremely tough. And then, like you said, having Texas coming in off a bye week for Kentucky, I obviously I think Texas wins the game, but it could certainly see a world where it's closer than people would think on paper. Yeah, I lean. I don't have a ton of wins down the stretch at Auburn. Unless Auburn just really gets off to a bad start and it doesn't go well, don't see them win that Jordan-Hare. I lean Tennessee too. Just overall talent base is better. I'm like you. I definitely think they win at least one of those last two, Vandy and Louisville. I kind of lean them beating Vandy too. To be honest, don't know a whole ton about Louisville, but definitely in the toss-up category as well. Wouldn't be shocked at all if Kentucky won that game. So I've got them. I'll go 5-7. Would it shock me at all though if they do better than that? It wouldn't at all. If they're 4-8 again, wouldn't be surprised with that either. Think there's definitely some variance here. with their team, but I don't foresee a significant improvement in the win-loss column more than likely, just because I just don't think they've upgraded enough and are going to be just significantly better on the offense and defensive lines. When you're talking about teams like Texas and Georgia and South Carolina and Florida and going to Jordan-Hare, and Tennessee's going to be good defensively, I just don't see them matching up consistently with a lot of those squads. And as we've highlighted here, Mark Stoops is going to be staying in Lexington, but I don't foresee. I'd foresee some big changes coming after this year, because I don't. Obviously, this level of production, if they go 4-8, 5-7 again, it's not going to fly in Lexington or anywhere for that matter.
Yep, completely agree. One guy to watch out for on this Kentucky defense. We talked about the defensive line. David Gusta, defensive tackle from Washington State. I think he's a pretty big guy. Now, in terms of improving the run defense, if there's going to be a guy to do it, it's going to have to be this guy. He's got to be an inside disruptor. Washington State is not exactly the premier defensive talent or defensive tackle talent school in the world, but hey, I mean, he's a 4-star transfer. I haven't seen a ton of tape on him, but I've seen a little bit, and I'm kind of impressed with what he was able to do at Washington State. But they do lose two guys. I mentioned him earlier. Keyshawn Silver transfers to USC, and then Deion Walker gets drafted to the Bills with his teammate Maxwell Hairston. I think those two defensive tackles are going to be majorly missed. Even though that Kentucky rush defense was god-awful last year, I don't necessarily know if I can blame it on those two guys. I guess we'll see. I mean, Brad White is their defensive coordinator at Kentucky. He's been there since 2019. So Stoops has got a lot of faith in him. I think if there was anybody to blame for the way that Kentucky played, it was the defense, obviously. I mean, the offense was also, they were bad. But, he keeps Brad White. So this is a staff that he's got faith in. So I think if the buy-in is there, kind of like Florida last year, this is a team that can go 6-6, 7-5. I just haven't seen him put pen to paper yet. So those are my final thoughts on the Wildcats.
I just want to say, too, I want to give Alexander a chance to shout out his podcast, and hope you guys give that a listen, give that a follow. Alexander, if you kind of want to shout out your podcast before we go into some of our final thoughts, and our people subscribing to our channel as well. And just want to say that we've really enjoyed having you on. This has been a pleasure. We'll definitely have to do this again. But, but tell the listeners a little bit more about your podcast and about your different social media channels.
Well, thank you all very much. Once again, I appreciate this opportunity a lot. You guys know ball, and that is something that is kind of rare in the space of college football nowadays. I very much appreciate this opportunity. Okay, so YouTube, Pleasant's podcast, as well as Instagram and TikTok. I talk about every major sport out there: NBA, NFL, college football, and college football, NFL, NBA. Yeah, those are the three ones that I cover. If you want to check those out, be sure to follow me on all platforms. You can just basically look me up by Pleasant. That's Plizont. So thanks again, guys. And I obviously do a college football show that's I don't do like long form content, but I would love to have you guys on there and get y'all's thoughts on a few college football games that's going to happen this year. So very excited to see what the future holds.
100%, man. We'll definitely have to get that together, but it's been a lot of fun. And just want to say you can follow us on our social media channels. We're on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC for the listeners. Our YouTube channel at Saturdays in the SEC. Would love for you guys to like and subscribe. The TikTok content's been doing outstanding. Card's been posting clips
nice
on our TikTok account. Getting a lot of traffic over there, which is really cool to see, and love seeing you guys give us your thoughts and comments. We talked a little bit about, we had our Missouri preview recently.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about the border war coming back with Kansas and Missouri. And let's just say we had some Kansas fans in the comments letting their thoughts be known on their neighbor in Missouri. So that was really fun to see too. So shout those Kansas Jayhawk fans out. But no, we really appreciate everyone tuning in, like I said, and appreciate you, Alexander, coming on.
Thank you, guys. It's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, guys. See you next episode.